welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. My guest today is a friend, somebody that I've known for about 15 years now. And I am just fascinated to have her on the show with me today. When we look at the soul of business, I want to just kind of, take a moment here. The way that I work with soul, though, it's not a religious thing at all. It has to do with, there's a kernel inside of everything that looks for full expression. And it's always looking. I'm a unique individual. There's never going to be another Blaine Bartlett in the history of the universe that will show up. So I get to express myself in a unique fashion. What is that uniqueness that seeks expression? I look outside of my office window here, and I've got the ocean out there, and I've got trees, and each one of these trees has got a unique expression. They're the same genus of trees. They're fir trees, but they each express themselves in a different way, and they express themselves fully if they're unhindered. So my guest today, Dr. Peggy McColl, has shepherded more books than I can think of into publication. She's an award-winning author herself, New York Times bestselling author a couple of times over. She's authored personally, over 24 books that have sold in over 100 countries, been translated into over 37 languages, and she is brilliant. I've seen her on stage. One of my very first encounters with her was some work that I was doing with Bob Proctor in one of his programs, and it was the first time I actually saw Peggy present, and I was kind of like, wow, that's good. That's good. I want to get to know this better. And I've been fortunate enough to get to know her and her husband much better over the course of these last 15 years or so. So, Peggy, I want to just welcome you to the show. Dr. Peggy McColl is in the room.
Thank you, Blaine Bartlett. I'm looking forward to seeing Dr. Blaine Bartlett. I am so delighted to be here. And, when we were having another conversation and it came up to be on your podcast, it's like, I love the work that you're doing. I too have been blessed to see you on stage before. Very impressed. I love the way you think. But more importantly, I love where your soul is at and your purpose as well. And, I find that, there was an expression that your network is your net worth. Yeah. And I'm so blessed to know you and your beautiful bride, Cynthia. And, I really feel you're quality people that are, part of a group of people that have just decided I'm showing up here on this earthly plane and I'm going to make a contribution in a positive and a powerful way. So it's a thrill, absolutely thrilled to be here with you.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, I'll tell you. Yeah, for sure. I usually start the show with a question, and I'll go ahead and do it this time as well. When you hear the term the soul of business, what does that bring up to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I can see why you would use that as a very effective question to begin the whole dialogue or the conversation. I'm an entrepreneur and I incorporated my company in 1994. So I've been around a while. What I've found is being in business is, a huge part of creating a successful business is the vision of the leader, how it was started or who even is running the business, because it's people. It's not a thing. It's not a robot. It's not AI that's running the business. There's a human there, and the humans have a soul. And I feel that, businesses will succeed when the soul of the business or the person that has this wonderful soul comes from a place of, how will I serve? How will I serve? And I, through the study of success, one of the things that I've discovered is that the businesses that thrive are businesses that are focused on bringing greater value to the world in their own unique way or in whatever way that they can, with the purpose of bringing something of value, up leveling another, not for the purpose of just making money, although creating profit is very important, because if you don't have that, you'll be out of business. So but I think it starts with, why are you here? Like, what is the purpose of your business? What is, like, I have a little marble block that sits on my desk. And I had this created a while ago. It says, my purpose is to make a positive and beneficial contribution. Like, I'm here to make a positive and beneficial contribution to the lives of hundreds of millions of others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an ego thing at all. It's a service thing. How will I impact the world that I'm impacting, hundreds of millions of people? Now we have over 8 billion on the planet, but that's not just my work. It's, like when Robin Sharma called me and said, could you help me with my book? Or Marianne Williamson, or Wayne Dyer, or Neil Donna Walsh. Like, these are all, Debbie Ford, all wonderful people that I was blessed to serve, to have as clients. And when they contacted me and said, help me get my book out there in the world in a bigger way, it was like, absolutely. Why? Because it's part of the soul of my business. The soul of my business is to bring something of greater value. And I found that over the years, my business has, changed. It's morphed somewhat. I was never, with the intention that I'm going to start this business, I'm going to be an author and I'm going to help authors. That was not even on my radar. It sort of happened, not by accident, of course, but as the evolution goes and as it grows, and we as business owners must remain flexible to being of service to others, because the world's changing. Even think about what happened a few years ago with COVID. That was an opportunity to step up, help those that are really dealing with challenges. So the soul of the business, to me, it comes down to the soul of the individual that's running the business.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You mentioned a couple of things there. You founded your company in '94, and it has morphed. I know it's gone through a number of different iterations. And one of the ways that I've come to define success, with particularly sustainable success with the clients, with whom I work, is that it's not about discovering the silver bullet and just replicating it. Get the recipe and just continue to make it. Sustainable success is the process by which I can learn how to continuously start over, developing the capacity to continuously start over. And the idea of your purpose, to impact these people. You have literally impacted over 1 million people. If it just look at through the lens of the authors that you have facilitated their books coming out, millions of people have read these authors. So there's a direct link back to Dr. Peggy McColl in all of this work as an expression of who you are. When you're working with just say an author as an example, and I've written 5 books, and it can be arduous. I mean, it's kind of like, why did I say yes to this? And when you work with your clients, how do you keep them connected to that spark that kind of set them on the path? Because in the face of, God, I don't want to do this, that comes up. How do because part of your role is to keep them connected, to keep them actually, in the flow of that writing process where that gem actually can emerge.
I love that. Such a good question. Yeah, I love that you've written 5 books. I feel that when you become an author, it's almost like an addiction of sorts, where I can't.
I've got another one in the burner right now. So.
Exactly. I just can't stop. I know that even when I was writing my 24th book, which is called The Moment of Creation, which has been picked up by a publishing house, I had an experience going through that thinking, oh God, why did I, why did I agree to do this? It's a big job.
Yeah.
And an enormous amount of focus, etc. And I get so intense when I'm doing it in a good way, because I just want to bring the greatest value. I mean, there are a lot of choices out there. There are a lot of books out there. And so I encourage the authors that I work with to, remind themselves of why. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose? And to then go to the place of, your book is now out there in the world, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I mean, either one. We're writing for a reason. Like, if it's fiction, you're writing to entertain or engage or scare the heck out of me, like whatever the reason is that you're writing your fiction book, there's a reason. Yeah. And maybe it is to, get known, because people do want the entertainment side of it. And then nonfiction, there's a variety of reasons why anyone would write a nonfiction book. Sometimes it's to build a brand or build their identity, let people know they're an expert because they've written a book, because that automatically happens. or they do want to make an impact, right? They really want to help people. And another reason why many authors write books is because they're in love with the subject,
Yeah.
and they were looking for that book. Like, where was that book? When I needed it, kind of thing. And then they couldn't find it or didn't know where it was, or they had the desire for it. They thought, oh, I'm going to write it myself.
Yeah.
And when I think about the moment of creation, that book, the subtitle is The Precise Moment Where Intention Becomes Reality. Because I wanted people to recognize the power of this moment right here, right now, because it is a creative moment right here, right now. How are you using your time right here, right now? Are you creating or are you destroying? Because is it getting better, getting worse? Because there's only one side of the equation that you can be on, better or worse. And so I think it comes down to reminding yourself of some very important messages. Why are you doing it in the first place? What's the impact you want to make? Can you see that vision? Can you really hold that? And then go to that place using our imagination of, what if this was wildly successful? What would
Use
that
the
look like?
imagination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Carl Jung's statement around the imagination. Without the play of the imagination, nothing of consequence ever came into reality or ever came into being.
So
Without the
good.
play of the imagination. And my experience of adults is we don't know how to play with our imagination.
Right.
Yeah, most people, when we think, oh, well, you just imagined that, they think of it as a frivolous activity. Everything is imagined. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, our old dear friend Bob Proctor. Yeah, everything is imagined. First, there's an idea, and then it comes into form if you're actually committed. And
True.
that's where I want to kind of take this in in the sense of commitment. In my experience in working with business leaders, the fallacy is around commitment is, I am committed and it's a done deal. It's a one and done sort of a thing. I've made the declaration. That's not how commitment seems to work. And I'm, and my experience of writing, it's a day-to-day, moment-to-moment. I'm committed. So instead of being committed to something out there, what I have found for myself is that I have to become the commitment. It's a state of being. It's a
Yeah, it
state of
is.
being. And when I enter that state of being, I am a commitment to this book. I am a commitment to having this manifested out there. That changes the whole nature of the game in one sense,
Mhm.
because now it lives in here and it's looking for expression.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
true.
I am a commitment. So that I amness comes into play. Have you experienced, that's my experience. So I'm just checking here, in your experience of 24 books, particularly the last one, how did that come into play, if in fact it did come into play?
Yeah, I think it comes into play with every project that I personally take on. And even as you're asking the question, I'm thinking about athletes, that have
Mm,
made a decision that they're going to do something. It's like that quote, I see only, it is Napoleon quote Bob used to use. I see only the objective, the obstacles give way.
yep.
Right? Remember Napoleon Bonaparte. I see only the objective, the obstacles give way. And business leaders like that too. Henry Ford, like, make the 8-cylinder engine. Well, we don't know how to do that. We can't do it. Just do it. Like, there's no other way but. Right. I feel if you develop that attitude of there's no other way, like, this is done, this is happening, like, it's not a maybe or an if, possibly, it is absolutely done. And so, when anything that I create, I develop that mentality. Well, I don't know about develop, I have that mentality.
Yeah.
As you're asking the question, I think about this as well. I have a lovely rawhide dog bone in my in
Yeah.
my drawer here, so I can
Yeah.
chew on it as an afternoon snack. Now, just kidding about the chewing part. But I think about, when I was a little girl, we had a dog and it had a little rawhide dog bone, and you try and take it away, like, come on, let me, pull it away. There was no way. I mean, that dog was not letting go.
Tenacious. Yeah.
Yeah, tenacious for sure. And I think that's an important part of all of this. It's an ingredient that must be there for business leaders, for authors, for athletes, for actors, for anyone. It's like, do you want it? And if so, remember Bob used to say, name it and claim it,
Yep.
like, get a hold of it and just don't let go. Now, you may feel like dropping it, but don't.
But don't.
You may have someone come along and say, what are you doing that for? Like, you can't have that. You can't do that. And you just say, no, like, I'm it's like when little kids when they go no 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 no, like I don't want to hear you, kind of thing. I'm not listening to that. I am not going there. And it happens. It does. It happens all the time. Most of the time where it's happening is in our own mind, right? So we got to play the whack-a-mole game, like up pops the bang, like that's not supportive. Up pops another one, bam, that's not supportive. And there's some days whack-a-mole's going on all day long, and there's other days it's just quiet, it's dormant. You're staying aligned. It's not happening, but it's certainly a fun game. Think about Catherine Ponder's work. Play the game of life. It really is a game. Business is a game. We're playing a game. Being an author is a game, but it can be a fun game. Now, whether you're enjoying it or not, like I know there's sometimes when my grandson will come over and he loves playing games. He's 13 now, and we'll play Monopoly. It's a good game to play. It's fun to play. And I want all the properties, right? I want park.
Boardwalk and Park Place.
That's right. We want those two and hotels on the mall, etc. And like there are times when Denis, he's very competitive. Like he'll be getting upset and angry and whatever. It's like lighten up. It's a game, like we're just here having fun. But that happens where people get so uptight that they're not enjoying the whole process. So I think that's part of it as well. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. Well, that whole notion of obstacles, things that are, imagined, barriers to what I want. When we build a business, and like you, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started a number of different businesses. The idea of, it starts with this kernel of an idea, this thing that wants to be expressed out there. What's the service or product and the difference it'll make? That's why I do it. I want to, get it out there. Now I'll make money, hopefully. But at some point in time, I get over that revenue hump, and now it's actually, there's money coming in. And then I start looking at, and this is kind of the natural maturation process, I think, in the business cycle, is we start building the business. We start putting in place processes and systems and that kind of stuff. And at some point in time, we've moved from being an idea, a spirited sort of a element here that has a business as a delivery mechanism, to now we're a business with a soul as an afterthought. And the focus becomes on the business's running, and the decisions are made in service of the business running rather than the expression of the soul. And the soul wants to grow. It wants to fully express, and it will express itself ideally in more and more magnificent ways, such that today it will look completely different than it did when it started out, if it's left to do what it needs to be done. And I'm going to put this in the context of book development. I know that when I started writing Compassionate Capitalism, which was the book I wanted to read, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so I wrote it. It changed from the initial concept, because I had the initial outline about 5 years before I actually wrote the book. But it was missing some elements. And when I started, these ideas, started coalescing, and all of a sudden, the clearer I got about what it wanted to be expressed as and how it wanted to be expressed, things started to fall into play here. And the end product was a completely different book than what I intended it to be initially.
Fascinating.
So in your experience in working with your authors, how common is that they start off with this germ of an idea that is being expressed just through the fact that they've said, "Hey, come work with me, help me shepherd this thing to life." But the end product ends up becoming a little bit different, or maybe a lot different than what was initially envisioned. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me, if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm, and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know whether it happens quite often. It probably happens more with the clients that I'm blessed to work with privately because I get to
Hmm.
know them more, rather than people getting in a group because I don't see what everybody's producing. But if I'm working with private clients, then I can see what they're producing. But I find that the thing that really sort of morphs their vision is that they don't always see the opportunities, right? Like in some ways, our paradigms blind us to where the opportunities are.
Hmm.
And this is why having a mentor can be so helpful with that because they can see more in you than you see in yourself. And they can see where the opportunities are. That's why, doing business consulting is very beneficial too, because from an outside looking in, you see things very differently. It's a
Yeah.
perception thing. And so, like, I know there was one client that I was blessed to work with, a businesswoman out of Colorado, and she had signed up with me to work with me privately, and she didn't know what the outcome would be from working with me. She just knew that she needed some direction. She felt a little lost. In
Hmm.
spite of having a very successful business, she felt unfulfilled. And so, I started working with her and getting to know her, and within a matter of maybe an hour or two, I discovered that she had gone through some pretty wow experiences in her life that were like life altering. And as much as in her mind she had minimized it, I realized that her experience could make a big difference, in the world. And so I encouraged her to write a book. That's not why she came to me, but I encouraged her to do it. And she did. And she's also now, this is all fairly recent, less than a year. But her story, and I don't want to give it away because it's quite a remarkable story, is being optioned to be made into a movie as well. And so, this was not something that she had seen before. But then we
Hmm.
spent some more time together, and I know that she's very passionate about the messages. She loves my teachings and loves the messages that I do in my business, and she wanted to do something similar as well. And so we came up with a name for a system that I saw. Like, I saw this in her. And so now it's evolved into another business. Now she's opening a center, and now she's got all these speaking engagements, and it's just like from one less than a year, because I haven't worked with her that long, she's established a brand new business, multiple revenue sources from that. But most importantly, what she's finding is a greater sense of fulfillment and enjoy, yeah, in what she's doing. And I think that's so important. Like, you think about you and me, Blaine, like we're at a point in our life where we might be considered seniors, and we don't
Well,
think that way. Well, maybe not you. Okay, I'll take responsibility for that. But there's a lot of people that are our age, and I even have a brother. Nothing against my brother. He's 70 in a matter of a week, and he loves being retired. He loves doing his thing, and yeah, and he talks about how his body, this is falling apart and that's falling apart or whatever, and gets up and he's creaking, and it's like there's an expectation. There's an expectation that, oh, because we're older, that we should be, winding down or, whatever. And it's like, I can't imagine that. I don't even know what I would do with myself, to be honest. I'd probably be bored out of my head. It would probably last like a day. Like, even on a Saturday and a Sunday, if we don't have plans of some sort and we aren't doing anything, and if my husband is into a sports weekend, like, he'll say to me, it's what today is, honey? And I'll say, what's that? And he goes, it's hockey day in Canada. And so
is that
that,
every day in Canada?
yeah, pretty much. But that means he's going to be in front of that television. He's
Yeah.
going to be watching game after game after game of all the Canadian hockey teams. And I'm thinking, woohoo, I get to go to my office and I get to create. And so I think it comes down to your passion. What are you in love with, and what is it you want to do, and how do you want to utilize your time as well? I don't even remember what your question was now.
But, no, it's about expression, continual expression. Form changes, and
Right.
if I love the reference to your brother. My sister, also is retired. I mean, the concept of retirement just does not set well with me. I've got no place to put that. And if I'm not growing, I'm withering. I mean, literally.
It's true.
Um, there's an old line that in one of Leonard Cohen, Canadian songwriter, and I love Leonard Cohen, but in one of his songs, and I love this lyric, I hurt in the places where I used to play. And it's
Oh,
just a wonderful line.
it
And
is.
yeah, and yeah, I get creaky, but it's kind of like, okay, this is for me, it's not something that stops me. It's kind of like, okay, how do I work with this? How do I actually leverage this more effectively? And it becomes, to your point earlier, it's a game. It becomes something that I can play with. And I wrote something, oh God, probably 20 years ago. I was looking for it the other day and I couldn't find it. But the title of it was A Firefly's Life.
Ooh,
Or not a firefly, a fruit fly's life. Now, a fruit fly only lives for 24 hours. And they're
really?
used, they're used for medical research. They're used for pharmacological research because they've got such a short lifespan. They can do a lot of studies real quickly on stuff. So the idea on the article that I wrote was, if I treat every day as if it's a fruit fly's life, I've got 24 hours. That is my life.
Wow.
And now, since then, that was 20 years ago, Stoic philosophy speaks to that. Seneca actually talked about that. Marcus Aurelius spoke to that. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, also talks about that. So it's not a new concept. But the
Yes.
idea of expression, the soul of who I am, is continuously looking for expression. And I've got a finite amount of time. I don't want to truncate that by retiring. It's kind of like,
Yes.
what? This is not making sense. Why would I do that to myself? Because, Bob was a great example of this. Our friend Bob. I mean, he was 87 when he passed, but he was teaching. I mean, literally right up, because that's what he did. Who,
Yeah.
Bob was a verb. I teach, therefore I am. Bob
That's so
was a
good.
verb, and I think if each one of us can actually position ourselves and think about, if I'm a verb, what verb am I? That gives the answer to the question, I am because I teach, therefore I am. And I've actually adapted that and adopted it for myself. I am most alive when I'm finding ways to teach.
Oh, yes.
And um, the challenge there is to be able to continuously find ways to do that. And over the years, that has morphed.
It is.
Prior
Yeah.
to COVID, I was on stages, I was on platforms. I mean, it was in person. After COVID, I had to reinvent the entire business. I teach, therefore I
Mhm.
am. How do I do that? Well,
Right.
this is a great mechanism.
Perfect.
Writing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote my last book, The Leadership Mindset, during COVID. It's kind of how I got to get some information out there. So let's write another book. And so, yeah, that's kind of, so I know there's a question embedded here and I'm not sure what it is, but
I love it. I love it.
yeah. Uh, so for yourself, and this would be a personal question, feel free to answer it or not in any way that makes sense to you. How are you seeing yourself evolve?
Oh, I love that. I had this conversation last night with my husband too, and very similar to what you and I are discussing here is that when and where am I in my happy place, right? And that's when I'm creating and I'm teaching or speaking. Like I love doing interviews. I love it. I just love serving. And so the passionate part is the creation of understanding where are the problems, what are the needs, what is it that people want, and how can I serve it? And similar to the law of compensation, because the law of compensation decrees the amount of money you're going to earn is going to be in direct proportion to the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. And Bob used to circle number two, then,
Number two. Yep.
yeah, your ability to do it, get really, really good at that. And so I'm always working on ways that I can improve my ability to teach. I like when I create a program like my author program as an example, and I've been doing my author program for many, many years. I'm constantly up leveling it. I'm redefining it, reteaching it. And just when I get to a point thinking, oh yeah, it's perfect and it's all done, then I'll get another idea. And then boom, up with more stuff. I mean, there's fundamentally things that will always
Yeah.
be the same.
Foundations. Yeah.
But if we look at our world, the world that we live in, and this actually I love is how it changes the evolution and AI, another
Oh,
new advent. and how that's changing the world. And there's many people who are like, stay away and striking about it, like really upset and
Mhm.
uptight about it. And that's, in my opinion, not the best approach, because it's not going away. It's here. So
Yeah.
embrace it, find a way. And this is something else that I've added to my author program, is how can you use AI legally, effectively, authentically,
Mhm.
honestly, to help you with your work, as an author. There's so many ways. So I've been creating classes on using AI to help you with your writing, using AI to help with titles, subtitles, chapter ideas, content creation, adjustment, flow, and then how to use AI in your marketing and your platforms and your brand and, your visibility and your posts and and all that. I mean, it's like my constant companion now.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that, as an entrepreneur, regardless of how old you are or whatever, you gotta embrace these changes,
Yeah,
because if not,
absolutely.
you're being left behind. I mean, you literally will be left behind. Like when in 1995, I did incorporate my company in 94, but I started it part-time. And so I was still working in a career at that time, doing my business part-time. So I started working for this company. It was the very first company in our country to sell dedicated internet access
Uh-huh.
to this
Uh-huh.
thing called the World Wide Web. And, people didn't even know how to spell www back then, but it was like, whoa. And I immediately knew this was going to be a game changer. And I
Yep.
set my website up. In fact, I don't know if you know this or not, Blaine, but I actually set up a website for Tony Robbins. And,
Did
and I
you really?
registered, I did, and I registered anthonyrobbins.com. I registered that. So that was one of my first domains. And I ended up giving it to one of his subsidiary companies, and they ran with it. In exchange, I went to the Mastery University program, which was, I was happy, they were happy. I mean, I wasn't planning on being Tony's I'm not a web developer or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the whole point is, we gotta, be open to the ways that we can better serve the world in whatever version that is. So I wake up every day with this attitude of mine. How will I serve today better than I did yesterday? How will I serve better? So, will I means there's going to be service, right? It's not, how could I? It's how will I? It's like a direct command, a little bit different than, how could I or how would I? No, it's how will you, because you're doing this, kind of
I'm
thing.
impacting all the time anyway. Yeah.
Right.
I can't not have impact.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
which is, kind of the question of leadership in one sense, because leadership is about impact. Leadership is about causing movement. Take away the personality and the characteristics and all that kind of stuff. What you're left with is somebody that's causing movement, which is
Right.
everybody. Everybody's
Yeah.
causing movement. So part of the question is it effective?
Mhm. Yeah.
Is it causing am I causing movement in the direction of what I say I want to have?
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing that, that's the time to take a pause and take a look.
Yeah, exactly. I think about over the years when I've been asked to do things, like I had mentioned Robin Sharma earlier, and I don't know when it was, maybe 2005, so quite a few years ago, but somewhere around there, I got a call one day from Hay House, who had published a book for Robin Sharma, and he had previously released a book through Harper Collins called um, hang on, it's coming to me. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari,
The monk who sold his Ferrari. Yep. Yep.
right?
That was the first
Great
big one.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big book. It was very popular. Then Hay House bought the rights to his next book called The Saint, the Surfer, and the CEO. Similar style, like parable style, a story with great messages in it. But yet it wasn't doing as well as he would have liked. And that's when they came to me, because they knew I was marketing online. I mean, I was online in 95, so I was so keen with, in technology and how can it support us and how can it help us, etc., that I just started marketing my own books online in 2002. And that's when people started calling me and going, how'd you do it? What are you doing? I want to do the same, because I was a single mom when I started marketing my books, and I didn't want to be
Hey,
gone from my son's life. I had no desire to do that. So I just found another way and found another way. So when Robin came to me or Hay House came to me and said, can you help? And I was like, sure. I mean, his book was ranked at 922,000 at that time. Now, back then, there was only about 1 million or so books. Now, like, oh boy, I mean, there's a lot more books, that are out there than there have ever been, hence the reason why it's so valuable to learn how to market. But nonetheless, that was sort of, and so when the questions come in, like somebody says to me, hey, Peg, do you want to do this? And I'm sure you do this as well, with your mastermind as an example. I always immediately go to my intuition. What is my intuition telling me right now? What am I feeling right now? Then that may seem like a silly thing, but my intuition is my best guide.
Yep. This is intuition and interchangeably, his soul, spirit. What's speaking?
Yeah.
What is saying yes?
Exactly.
Yeah. What is saying yes? Yeah. And what is it saying yes to? Yeah. There's a reciprocity that kind of gets built in here. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I think about things like, I'm just having flashbacks in my mind. Do you remember when Bob Proctor and Mary Morrissey and Gay Hendricks and I were doing Making a Million Look Small?
Making a Million Look Small. Yep. Yeah.
That was so much fun. That's my next book, actually. I've got a publishing contract to write Making a Million Look Small. But that whole idea came from a conversation that I was having with Bob one day, where we're talking about this real estate that I was looking at. And it was $1 million more than the one that we were in at the time. And he goes, $1 million's neither big nor small. Only thinking makes it so. If you want the house, get the house. You're the only one standing in your way. And it was like, bam. I mean, it was like, the idea is
absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, it immediately came to me. I was like, oh yes, you're so right. And then he said, well, write a book called Making a Million Look Small. And I was working on a program at the time. And so he, like, within an hour, I had the cover done. I mean, I created a big plan, what I'm going to do with this and how I'm going to teach it. And it was just so good. And then Gay Hendricks called and said, what are you working on, Peg? And I told him, and he goes, I want to be a part of that. And then Mary Morrissey asked, what are you working on, Peg? And I said, oh, I'm working on this. I want to be a part of that. And I thought, well, we got to invite Bob in. And so, this is just an example of one idea that evolved into the four of us. My husband used to call us the Beatles because there were four of us. The Beatles doing, we did events together and we ran this business together for a few years. And it was so much fun and so enlightening and so rewarding at the same time. And so I think that, when we are living our life from our soul and we understand what our purpose is, we get ideas and we attract them. And most of the time, they're things that we wouldn't have even thought up ourselves. They just, bam, land in and you got to go with it.
And it's fun. That's, for me, that's kind of the litmus test. Is it fun? If it's not fun, there's something's missing here.
Right.
And it's usually my soul. It's usually my soul. Peggy, where can people find out more about what you're up to? We could continue this I'm just looking at the time here going, we gotta wrap up. Where can people find out more about what you're up to and that sort of stuff?
Easily, just at my website, PeggyMcColl.com, which is PEGGYMCCOLL.com. I'm constantly, doing freebies. We've got events, everything. We just update it all the time. So PeggyMcColl.com. I've got a couple of free ebooks as well on the front page. People can go download. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you. Folks have been listening to Dr. newly minted here, Dr. Peggy McColl. And this conversation, like I said, I could continue this conversation for some time, and I've been fortunate enough to be in a number of conversations with Peggy. So this is good stuff. It's great to be, back in harness with you here, folks. As always, my admonition to you is to find a way in your life to be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. Yeah, nature works through distribution; it doesn't work through accumulation. And if you can land on that and actually make it part of your life, you're going to have a life that works pretty well for yourselves. So until next time, hit the like button on this. Make any comments that you'd like to have. Feedback is welcome. And I will see you on the next episode. Take care.